Thank you for joining us again for Let the Bible Speak. A couple of days ago, I talked about the idea that there are no signs of the end. And that may have created a question in the minds of some of our listeners about, well, then how do you explain Matthew 24? And so I want to touch on that for just a moment this afternoon or whenever you're listening to this, if it's in the morning for you. Uh, and Matthew, the 24th chapter, one of the things you have is Jesus being very clear that he's not talking about here are signs for the end of the world. And we know that because of how it starts in chapter 24, verses 1 and 2. Then Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said to them, do you not see all these things? And this is the temple, the buildings of the temple, the surrounding building. He's talking about Jerusalem. He says, surely I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down. And so what was going to happen was God was coming in judgment against his own people. And the reason for is because, they had persecuted the prophets and scribes and such, and they crucified. And so God says, I'm going to come in judgment against them. Now, how do we know that? If you just go up one chapter, chapter 23, I'm going to pick up in verse 34. He says, therefore, indeed, I send you prophets, wise men, and scribes. Some of them you will kill and crucify, and some of them you will scourge. Scourge is to beat in a torturous way. Scourge in your synagogues and persecute from city to city. And then he says in verse 35, that on you, that is the people to whom he's speaking, that on you may come all the righteous bloodshed on the earth, from the blood of the righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Surely I say to you, all these things will come upon, pay close attention here, this generation. It was the generation to whom he was speaking. And so he's going to punish them, or judgment was going to come upon them. And now, if I was questioning who is he talking about, look at verse 37, the very next verse. He says, oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophet, stones those who are sent to her. How often I want to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. See, your house is left to you desolate. For I say to you, you shall not see me no more until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. He tells them very clearly their house is going to be left desolate. And that's when we read Matthew 24, where he talks about not one stone will be left upon another. He's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. And his disciples are perplexed by this. And so in verse 3 of Matthew 24, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? And so they wanted to know, when will this destruction of Jerusalem occur? But they also associated that with the end. They thought this was going to be the end. Notice how Jesus responds in verse 4, beginning in verse 4. And Jesus answered and said to them, take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. These things are going to happen, but they're not in connection with the end. Now, it can't get no clearer than that. And so this Jerusalem is going to be destroyed. The temple is going to be destroyed. Not one rock will be upon another, one stone upon another. But that was not in connection with the end of the world. It was in connection with the end of Jerusalem. In verse 7, he gives them some more signs as when Jerusalem is going to be destroyed. But nation will rise against nations, kingdom against kingdoms. There will be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in various places. Verse 8, all these things are simply the beginning, he says, of sorrow. And then he says, verse 9, for they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you. Who's the you? It's the apostles that he's speaking. And you will be hated, he says, by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended and will betray one another and will hate one another. And then there'll be many false prophets will rise up. And then he's going to go on and give a listing of all these things that people say are signs of the end. But they're not. There were signs that the end of Jerusalem was coming, not the end of the world. And sort of the hallmark passage that gives us a timing of when all these things that he talks about was going to take place is verse 34. Again, Matthew 24, verse 34. Surely I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. That generation to whom he is speaking, the things that he promised was going to take place, and in 70 AD, Jerusalem was destroyed, along with the temple, as he promised. The signs that he gave them was not the signs of his return, because he says no one knows except the Father, not even the Son, not the angels in heaven knew when Jesus was going to return and the final judgment that's going to take place upon the world. But concerning the judgment of Jerusalem, well, he knew that, and he gave them signs concerning that. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem. I hope this has been helpful to you as you try to understand this text. And I know there's a lot out there talking about signs of the end. Matthew 24, what's highlighted there as far as these signs is not about it. It's not about the end of the world, only the end of Jerusalem. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to study these things more with us, we'd be more happy to do that. If you'd like to learn more about what the Bible says a person needs to do in order to be right with God, we'd be more than happy to study that with you as well. Just give us a call. The number on the screen is 843-553-5157. Again, that's 843-553-5157. We'll see you next time.